80% of your work is just keeping your mouth shut, but no one does it. It's like, oh, we listen so that we can speak. I only listen, and that person speaking, thoughts are generated in my head. And when I get my first opportunity, I get to speak now. It's now my turn.
So Andy, I mean, this chapter seems really obvious. Why did you dedicate a whole chapter to this? Like, how do I do this, right? Like it just seems like duh.
Yeah.
Right.
Because nobody shuts the hell up. Nobody shuts the hell up. It might be obvious, but it's almost like, God, 80% of your work is just keeping your mouth shut, but no one does it. It's like, oh, we listen so that we can speak. I only listen, and that person speaking, thoughts are generated in my head. And when I get my first opportunity, I get to speak now. It's now my turn. It's now my turn. And this auto response is blocking the opportunity to deepen connection. So I was like, I could have called the chapter "Shut Up and Listen," or just "Shut Up." I mean, you don't even need to listen. Actually, it's almost like it's not even a skill. It's just a discipline. Like, oh, I'm going to be quiet and just let that person speak, and we don't do it.
So, I mean, okay, you know me.
Yeah.
I obviously have a really hard time with this.
Of course.
And I know it.
Which is why you're here.
So I obviously have a really hard time with this.
Yeah.
And I know it, and you know it, and everybody knows it. But doing it is a totally different thing. So how in the world do you get over this? And yeah, I'll let you answer that, and I want to follow up with some more on that.
So again, let's go back. If things are working well for you, you've got no issue, you don't do it. But if you say, I'd like to deepen my relationship with someone, or someone's going through some struggle and I'd like to be there for them, then I would then suggest holding your tongue. And even when someone says something that triggers you, like, I really don't think that you're doing a good job, or I don't like how you've been behaving. What do you mean how I've been behaving? So all of a sudden the trigger and the reaction means that now I'm taking up the space from this person who might be in a very vulnerable moment, sharing something very hard for them. So by letting them speak and just saying, wow, how? And then like letting them, it's almost like them saying it all is enough to heal. Like it's almost like, oh, now I've got it off my chest, I'm okay. Now, if you take it on yourself and you're burdened by it, of course, that's another thing that would need to be, discussed. How to deal with if someone, offloads on you. But for the healing process and the connection, just giving space. One example would be, I was in a situation with someone who couldn't shut up, and I just said, I only want you to do this, and I was very prescriptive. I said, I only want you to be quiet, and if you say anything, regardless of what they say, you say, what else? So whatever they say, even if it's not appropriate to use those words, you're going to use those words. So they could make a sentence that what else doesn't even make sense, but I force you to do it. So what ends up happening is that through this, what else? So this person felt fully seen and heard by this individual. They came back to me and said, Andy, they told me that this was like the nicest discussion we've ever had, and I did nothing. And that's the humor of it, is that, yeah.
But what about, so I know for me, when somebody has a topic that they want to talk about,
yeah,
and they're obviously interested, they're obviously passionate about it, and they're going, I see myself going, how do I further their goal? Because they're obviously connected to this, they're obviously passionate about it.
Yeah.
And so obviously I'm thinking about how to help them as they're talking so that I can add, right? So I can add to it. Because I already know some of the things they're going to be talking about, and now I'm like, okay, how do I take this further? How do I take this further? So I'm not listening in that sense, but I'm not listening because I have the intention of helping.
Yeah.
So is that okay? What do I do about that? Because I'm obviously interrupting them. I'm obviously pushing them. I'm obviously giving as much as I can give out of that intention of being there for them. What would you say about that?
Well, we had a few instances where either of us, while we were preparing for these talks, we'd be talking, and then either one of us would just forget whatever thought we had. That's listening, because I'm not holding on to my thoughts, waiting for you to finish. I'm fully there, and all of a sudden, whatever you're saying I'm letting it come in. And then that becomes how we engage the next in the next sentence or question or whatever.
That actually happened in the last video, by the way, when you were telling your story, and I was like, I'd actually lost connection to the thing to ask the next questions.
Well, me as well. I had the same, right? Because all of a sudden the conversation became so meaningful. Like, well, who cares what the intention of this chapter was? And now I even forget where we were, what this chapter is saying now. I don't even know what I'm supposed to be answering to. But
Yeah,
where are we?
so no, my problem is that when it comes to, because I'm always thinking about what I'm going to say next, which is against what you want to accomplish here in this chapter. But it's because of that intention I have, which I think is a good intention to further something that somebody else is passionate about. And really what I'm wondering is first, is that okay? And two, is there a reason I shouldn't do that, right? Is there a reason that what you're saying, I should consider a different perspective on that rather than my intention?
This is a hard one. It's always about context. So in some instances, I'd say, hey, great to butt in, great to say this is what I can do, great to see how much receptivity there is to that. But how I almost always do it, like really almost always, is like, so you've explained all this, so what's your biggest challenge at the moment? So I'll meet the person where they are and not necessarily bring anything in they haven't already asked for. Doesn't mean anything I have doesn't go away. That all stays there. But I'll just say, what's going on for you right now? Or some person will act so confident about everything. I'll say something like, it doesn't sound like you've got any real questions or challenges. And then they'll either say, no, I don't. And then why would I bring anything forward? It would just be me imposing something on them. Sometimes I say, no, you don't see it. And then I say, so where could you use help? And so it's kind of an emergent dialogue that may or may not lead back to what I'm doing, but I don't assume that ahead of time.
Yeah, I mean, I guess, as I think about it, I'm thinking about the relationship with my son, who's 6 years old. And, he shares something with me, and he's so excited to share it, and I'm so excited to teach him. And the whole time I'm thinking about how to teach him, and what he really wants is just to show me how much he knows, and he wants me to be proud of him. And what I'm doing instead is I'm creating an opportunity to teach him, which is what I want to do, instead of respecting what he actually wants and helping him get what he actually wants, which I also would want to give him. It's just that my intention may be getting in the way in that sense, rather than just being there for him. So it's interesting.
Yeah, and just as a caveat to that, the last, I guess, maybe decade, I've been working with something called SOUL, Self-Organized Learning Environments, which is a guy named Sugata Mitra. He took a computer iPad sort of thing and put it at a shanty town in India, and the kids would just use this computer and self-organize, learn, have their own curiosity, their own questions, and those kids were then tested against the kids who went to school, and they were scoring at equal levels. So the humor was the active curiosity of these kids learning and posing questions, like gave them the opportunity to to learn and discover with curiosity and excitement things that would have otherwise been taught in the school, like, hey, this is what you need to know by this grade. So yeah, it's sparking the curiosity obviously is incredible learning. I believe we're going to go back to that as well as a society, that we want to facilitate other people's learning as opposed to teach them stuff.
Right.
Yeah.
Great. Thanks.